The invisible one. How they overlooked you. You were right there. Open, present, willing. You didn't ask for much, just honesty, effort, a little softness in return. But somehow, it was always too soon, too close, too much. You laughed at their jokes. You listened when they needed space. You loved them not for their potential, but for their humanity, even when it came wrapped in silence and confusion. But still, they didn't see you. Not really. They saw your gestures, your consistency, your patience, but they didn't feel the depth behind it, because they weren't looking with their heart. They were looking through a lens clouded by fear. You offered a kind of love that wasn't performative. You didn't manipulate. You didn't force closeness. You just showed up again and again, hoping they'd meet you halfway. But with avoidance, halfway always feels too far, because closeness threatens what they've worked so hard to protect: their illusion of independence, their control over emotion, their belief that if they don't need anyone, no one can ever hurt them. So what did they do? They minimized your presence, not with words, but with energy, a delay in response, a half-hearted effort, a wall dressed up as, "I just don't know what I want." And somehow, you accepted that, not because it was okay, but because you believed in them. You saw the soul beneath the avoidance. You felt the flickers of warmth, those brief, beautiful moments when they let their guard down, and you held on to them, like emotional breadcrumbs leading to a home they never let you enter. They didn't mean to overlook you. They didn't even realize they were doing it, but it still hurt. And over time, the ache of being unseen settled into your body like a quiet grief. You started questioning yourself. Am I asking for too much? Maybe I should just give them more time. Maybe if I show them how deeply I care, they'll finally open up. But that's the tragic irony of loving and avoidant. The more available you are, the less they know what to do with you. Because to them, love isn't ease. Love is pressure. Love is exposure. Love is the thing that once let them down. So now, they keep it at arm's length. And you, the one person who came without an agenda, became invisible in the very light you were trying to offer. But let's make one thing clear. Your worth was never defined by their blindness. Your love didn't become smaller because they couldn't hold it. They overlooked you because they were still hiding from themselves. And one day, that will be the very thing they remember most. That they had something rare, right in front of them, and they couldn't see it, until it was no longer theirs to hold. Why avoidants don't see value until it's gone? They don't see you clearly while you're near. Because to someone who's afraid of closeness, proximity doesn't breed intimacy, it breeds discomfort. It activates their oldest fear, the fear of being emotionally exposed, of being needed, of being seen in a way they were never prepared to hold. To understand this, you have to go back, not just into their relationship history, but into the architecture of their inner world. Somewhere in their story, they learned that love is dangerous. That connection means surrender. That to be vulnerable is to give someone else the power to abandon you. So they did the only thing that made emotional sense at the time. They withdrew. They detached. They trained themselves not to feel fully because it was safer that way. And now, every time someone like you comes along, someone who loves from the soul and not the ego, someone who doesn't play games, someone who sees them, their nervous system panics. You didn't threaten them, but what you represented did. You were consistent, and that confused them. You didn't flinch when they pushed you away, and that destabilized their control. You stayed calm when they pulled back, and that disrupted their power. They were used to drama, to distance, to lovers who reinforced the narrative that love is either chaotic or cold. But you reflected something unfamiliar: stability. warmth, wholeness, and because they didn't know how to receive it, they told themselves stories. I'm just not ready. I don't want to hurt you. I need space to figure things out. But the real story was deeper. They couldn't see your value because it was wrapped in a form of love they didn't recognize as safe. Carl Jung taught that what we deny in ourselves, we often reject in others. To an avoidant, your emotional availability mirrored back the very softness they'd buried inside themselves. And instead of embracing it, they disowned it. You weren't too much. You were too pure, too real, too unfiltered, too present. And because they couldn't meet you in that presence, they distorted your value. Here's what most people don't understand. Avoidants don't know they're avoiding. They think they're being cautious, wise, responsible. They tell themselves they're protecting you from the storm inside them. But really, they're protecting themselves from the flood of emotion you stir. And while you're there, loving them, choosing them, waiting for them to see you, they're too busy managing their fear to feel your love. They confuse safety with suffocation, intimacy with intrusion, kindness with obligation. So they minimize you, not because you weren't valuable, but because feeling your value would require them to feel their own. And that's a shadow they've spent a lifetime avoiding. But shadows don't stay buried forever. One day, the silence you left behind becomes louder than any word they ever spoke. One day, your absence becomes the mirror they can't escape. And in that mirror, they'll finally see the person they were never brave enough to hold. The one who never asked them to be perfect, only present. The one who loved them through their armor, until the armor became the reason they lost you. The turning point. What makes you irreplaceable? There's no announcement, no dramatic final fight, no poetic goodbye. The turning point is quiet, internal, almost invisible to them until it's too late. It's when you stop trying to prove yourself, when you stop translating their silence into potential, when you finally choose peace over possibility. You don't leave with rage, you leave with clarity. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself. And for someone with an avoidant pattern, that shift is seismic, because they were banking on your need, your softness, your emotional presence. They thought you'd always be there, waiting, hoping, available. They didn't realize that presence is a gift, not a guarantee. And the moment you go quiet, truly quiet, not to manipulate, not to punish, but because your soul no longer feels safe trying, everything changes. At first, they might feel relief, a break from pressure, the return of control. But eventually, the silence starts to ache, because it's not empty. It's full of your absence, full of the energy they once took for granted, full of a warmth they told themselves they didn't need. Until it was gone. That's when they start to remember the way you listened, the way you offered love without condition, the way you held space for parts of them even they couldn't understand. Not everyone does that. Not everyone stays calm when the avoidant pulls away. Not everyone offers emotional safety without demanding immediate payoff. And suddenly, the very things they once minimized become the things they can't stop thinking about. Because here's the paradox they never expected. You become irreplaceable the moment you stop chasing. Not because you withdrew affection, but because you reclaimed your energy. You stopped performing, stopped over-explaining, stopped showing up for someone who couldn't even see you. And now they're left with a version of you they never truly knew, because they never let themselves receive it. What makes someone finally see your worth is not your effort. It's your absence, your boundaries, your silence that says, I'm done loving someone who hides from themselves. That's the moment the spell breaks. The moment the avoidant wakes up to a truth they can't unsee. You weren't asking for too much. You were offering everything to someone who didn't yet know how to hold it. And now that you're gone, they realize no one else will love them quite like you did. Not with conditions, not with ego, but with presence. And they'll feel it, not just in memory, but in every shallow connection that follows. Because no one fills a space that was shaped by someone who loved them without fear. Their awakening. How regret forces reflection. First, they try to distract themselves. They dive into work, mindless scrolling, half-hearted conversations. They tell themselves you'll come back. You always have. But this time, something feels different. You're not reacting, not checking in, not reminding them of your presence. You're just gone, and it doesn't hit all at once. It comes in quiet waves, in the moments where they used to reach for you and now feel only space. The sound of a notification that doesn't come. A thought they can't share because you're no longer listening. A memory that visits uninvited in the middle of the night. It's not silence anymore. It's a void. This is when regret begins to surface. But not the kind that comes from shame or apology. This is the slow, psychological kind. The kind Carl Jung described when he said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." They resisted your closeness, resisted the warmth that asked nothing but presence. And now, in the absence of it, they begin to feel just how large your love truly was. Avoidants don't just miss people. They miss what they were allowed to avoid. With you, they didn't have to perform. They didn't have to hide behind ego or status. You saw them in all their confusion, contradiction, and woundedness. And you stayed. That's what haunts them now. Not that you were perfect, but that you were real. And they pushed that away. Their awakening isn't loud. It's not a sudden collapse into grief. It's slow, unavoidable, made of tiny realizations that collect into one unbearable truth. I didn't know what I had until they stopped trying to prove they were worthy of me. That's when the power dynamic reverses. Now they are the one wondering, did I ever truly show up for you? Did I ever make you feel safe? Did I ever offer what you so freely gave? And more than anything, why didn't I choose you while I still had the chance? They remember the version of themselves they were with you. Soft, scared, uncertain, but accepted. And they realize it wasn't you who needed to change. It was them. Not to become someone perfect, but someone present. And that's the painful gift of your absence. It shows them a part of themselves they've been running from their entire life. You didn't trigger them. You revealed them to themselves. And in that revelation, they begin to see not just who you were, but what it cost you to stay so long, waiting for them to arrive. The higher truth, you were never waiting to be chosen. They may see your worth now. They may feel the weight of what they lost. They may finally understand the depth of what you gave, once it's no longer available. But here's the deeper truth. You were never waiting to be chosen. Not really. That illusion, the one where you thought love had to be earned through patience, silence, or self-sacrifice, that wasn't your truth. That was your wound. A wound shaped long ago by someone who made you feel that love was something you had to chase. That presence was conditional. That worth was transactional. That affection could be revoked if you took up too much space. But this journey, it cracked something open in you. And now you see clearly. You were never too much. You were just giving love to someone who didn't yet know how to receive it. Someone who mistook your strength for pressure, your vulnerability for dependence, your devotion for demand. And none of that was a reflection of you. It was a reflection of where they were on their path, still frozen in a version of love, where needing someone meant weakness. But you've outgrown that version. You no longer chase people who run from themselves. You no longer try to rescue someone who refuses to sit with their own heart. You no longer lower your light to make someone else feel comfortable in their shadows. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." And that's exactly what happened to you. You stopped looking outside. Stopped trying to fix the unfixable. Stopped pouring yourself into empty spaces that were never yours to fill. You awakened, not in bitterness, not in resentment, but in truth. The truth that your love is rare, that your energy is sacred, that your heart, open, loyal, and real, is a gift that should never have to beg for recognition. And maybe, just maybe, they'll come back, not with charm, not with games, but with awareness. And if they do, you won't need revenge. You won't need apologies written in tears, because you've already moved beyond the need to be chosen. You've chosen yourself, and that's what finally makes you irreplaceable. So if you've ever been overlooked, ever been made to feel like too much or never enough, this message is yours. Let your voice be heard in the comments. Subscribe for more reflections like this one. And remember, you don't have to shrink to be seen. You only need to stand in your truth. The right ones will feel it, and the wrong ones will regret it.